Hey folks, what's up? Tonight we're going to run through the 8.25 Frost Mage guide. If you're new to my channel, hit the subscribe button. Helps me a ton, keeps me motivated to kick out some solid videos. I'll help you out. So from a talent standpoint, this is going to be the recommended rating build continuing on in this X-Pack. You're going to see it here. So we're going to go with Bone Chilling, Shimmer, Incanter's Flow, Ebon Bolt, Frigid Winds, Calm Storm, and Glacial Spike. We're really less reliant on utility. Quite a few different approaches. We're not really worried about as many slows. We just really want to be bringing that high heat. In terms of Mythic Plus, it's actually pretty similar. You're going to go Bone Chilling, Shimmer, Incanter's Flow. You can go Ebon Bolt, but you can also go with Frozen Touch or Chain Reaction. It actually just depends on you knowing what the dungeon is that you're about to go into. Um, Honestly, none of the choices there are really great for rating. Frigid Winds is stronger, and that's where we're going to talk in the next little minute. Um, Ice Ward giving you 2 charges of Frost Nova, that just gives you a little bit more CC. Um, but really, Frigid Winds helps if your tank wants to kite. Reducing everyone's movement speed is pretty material. Except for on Sanguine Weeks, you probably want to talent out of it, as it'll probably keep the mobs stuck in place for too long. Tier 6, no real crazy change. There's a couple things you want to keep in perspective. Basically, any of the 3 work. Comet Storm helps, adds a little bit of hit. Spitting Ice works as well. Just it's the bolt onto Ebon Bolt and Glacial Spike, as well as Freezing Rain. So pretty easy as far as that goes. Finally, on Tier 7, Thermal Void and Glacial Spike are the 2 real options. Avoid Ray of Frost. Glacial Spike really helps. It's just that massive single target damage, but it requires 5 icicles to cast it if you're not familiar. It makes Ice Lance no longer launch icicles as well. Glacial Strike is probably the go-to if you're going against 1 or 2 characters, not really looking to rely on Cleave to knock down some mobs. Alternatively, Thermal Void, like I said, is an easy way to roll. So when we get into Azurite Traits, there's a couple builds that are there. So if you want to go with a no Ice Lance build, basically you get 3 Flash Freeze traits and ideally 3 other pretty good traits. So go for Treacherous Covenant, Relational Normalization Gizmo, or non-Ice Lance traits like the Tunnel of Ice or Frigid Grasp. And you can play basically a no Ice Lance build. It's pretty easy. The best rating traits you can go for, as we mentioned, Flash Freeze. It's just amazingly powerful. Really try to get 3 of these on each piece of your Azurite gear. If you're totally new, each icicle deals additional damage, and when that icicle deals damage, you have a 5% chance of gaining Fingers of Frost. So you're getting a pretty high Fingers of Frost proc event. Additionally, Treacherous Covenant is a fantastic trait as well, and it just gives you that boost when you're above 50% health. And that should be pretty easy from our perspective. Alternatively, Tunnel of Ice, Frigid Grasp, Packed Ice, they're all solid trait builds, so take some time, load up on them. Really, when it comes to Azurite traits, or even your essences, or what stats to go with for upgrading gear, take some time, introduce yourself to Ask Mr. Robot or something similar to learn how to really work your specs. As far as stack rankings go, don't take this as gospel. You really want to prioritize crit and get it up over 33.34. That's basically the break point for crit. After that, you're going after haste, versatility, mastery, intellect, and then finally crit again after your breakpoint. If you're going to go with a no Ice Lance build, your priorities change a little bit. You actually want to prioritize mastery, then crit up to your breakpoint. Then you're going to go with verse, haste again, intellect, or crit. So really important to understand that these are basics and probably won't be the same for you. Don't fixate on them. If your 15 eye level upgrade doesn't have crit as its secondary stat, don't panic. But take some time to really understand what that looks like. The real benefit of crit is for frost mages, you have shatter. It makes you always critical strike on frozen targets when you have 33% crit. Totally worth it to go dig into. Mastery helps Frostbolt and Flurry, basically to store an icicle which deals damage, and it's dependent on what your powers are. Most racials are basically even here. The exception kind of consistent with Fire Mage. We really like dwarves. Like we think that there's a pretty solid benefit there. So take some time, check them out. Always go for a race, basically with a racial ability that can be used for progression rating. That on use ability, like trolls for instance, dwarves, those are the major go-tos. Make sure you're taking the time to load up on them. All right, so as far as rotation goes, the basics are you want to spam Frostbolt at your target as much as possible until you get a proc. If the proc is Fingers of Frost, you really want to use it immediately with Ice Lance. If you get Brain Freeze, you want to combo the Flurry after either a Frostbolt or a Glacial Spike. It's then followed by an Ice Lance. That's the major difference, just like this. So Glacial Spike should never be cast without it either hitting 2 targets or being shattered using Flurry. Like that's kind of the basics of where it is that we're trying to go. So the rules, if you really want to write it down as far as how to min-max your Frost Mage, use Icy Veins on cooldown as much as possible. Always cast Ice Lance if you're going with that build after Flurry. Only use Flurry when you get a Brain Freeze proc. Blizzard when you have 2 or more targets on or around you. And if you have between 0 and 3 icicles, use Flurry with Frostbolt or Ebonbolt. If you have 4 or 5 icicles, use Flurry and Glacial Spike. Use Frozen Orb. And use Ice Lance if you have Fingers of Frost. That's one of the big key. Use Comet Storm, followed by Ebonbolt on cooldown. After that, you want to hit your Glacial Spike if you've got a Brain Freeze proc, or if it'll hit 2 targets. And then after that, you're back to Frostbolt. So it seems pretty complex, but there's really only 6 choices here. It really just depends on what are the 2 procs you're going to get. Are you picking up a Brain Freeze? That automatically should drive you one way, or are you going Fingers of the Frost? So if you want to go with the no Ice Lance build, when you get 3 Flash Freeze Azurite traits, as we mentioned earlier, a lot of mastery and non-Ice Lance traits, there is a possibility that you should play the no Ice Lance build instead of the standard build. So basically what that means, you're going to remove Ice Lance after Flurry. So 3 Flash Freezes means no Ice Lance. You only ever cast Ice Lance if you have a Splitting Ice and you'll hit 2 targets with it. Always save Brain Freeze for Glacial Spike procs and never use it with Frostbolt. It's really one of the keys. Only use Ebonbolt if you have 5 icicles and no Brain Freeze proc, so that's pretty standard. And only cast Glacial Spike with Brain Freeze, even if you will hit 2 targets with it. So there's an APL for the no Ice Lance build. Go to pastebin.com. Basically paste the text inside a custom APL field on Raidbot's website to see if there's a better build for you. Take the time to figure that out again. Learning how to sim yourself is key. As far as interface goes, there's a few out there in terms of macros that you can set up. Basically, ice block, cancel ice block, counter spell from a mouse over, remove curse from a mouse over, and casting blizzard on the location of your cursor. You can set that up. That'll take away a couple extra clicks, but really, take some time, invest in learning how to sim yourself, learning what your weak auras are. And if you made it this far into the video, folks, thanks a bunch for checking it out. Punch that subscribe button and let me know what I can do better. Thanks for watching. Peace.